Well, good evening, this is Hound Dog Steve, wishing you well, and I hope that you are in fine fettle and ready for the weather chaos that is about to befall us. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about this evening, is the weather, because the Chinese government and Chinese scientists have now come out and said that they're seeing early signs of a cooling trend. And I find it kind of interesting that it's the Chinese who've taken the first step with actually stating the truth about the weather situation. And the reason is quite simple, and that is the Chinese is an ancient civilization. You know, if you go back 2,000 years, the terracotta horsemen, or the terracotta army of the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, and these horsemen are so well made, they're basically ceramic, and even today, some 2,000 years later, artisans cannot create the terracotta horseman without cracking the clay when it fires. So these were very advanced people. They kept incredible records, they were incredible astrologers, and of course, as you look at this chart that I'm going to post up now, I'm going to show you a bigger version of this in a moment when we go through this article, but you can see quite clearly that during every cooling period, dynasties have collapsed. So the Chinese authorities are acutely aware of what happens when there is a cooling trend and food production is compromised, because when you have approximately 1.5 or 1.6 million people in your country, and just to give you a little bit of an idea of what that is, if you would add all of the people in North America, South America, Canada and Europe and the UK, double it, you got pretty close to an idea of the size of the population in China. And if those people start to starve, my God, there is absolutely no stopping them. And so, of course, the Chinese government, although, you know, I'm sure some people are going to say, well, you know, how can you trust the Chinese government? You know, they have this social credit platform where they monitor all their people, and it's, I mean, draconian is actually a kind way to describe this social credit platform. And of course, some of the re-education camps that the Chinese have to bring you in line with the administration's ideology, and of course the abandonment of elections in the name of democracy, and so Xi Jinping is now president for life. But aside from that, because, as I say, the consequences of food production or loss of food production in China are so dire, they just cannot afford to fool around in pretending that there is nothing going on or that there are no consequences from climate change. And so kudos to them for coming out with the truth, and I'm sure this will disturb the whole world's point of view on climate change and the fact that we are going into a grand solar minimum. And again, if you look at this chart that's up here right now, and you look on the right hand side, you can see, or your right hand side, sorry, you can see where our present situation is against the mean temperatures. Now this chart is 740,000 years of weather data from the Greenland ice cores, so they're fairly accurate. And you can see, firstly, the amount of time that we spend in ice ages. You know, this planet has been cooler much more than it's been warmer. And so, of course, these cooling periods do affect the entire ecosystem of the planet. And, of course, the universe is a very cool place. The temperature in space is minus 275 degrees Celsius. So the fact that this planet is warm enough to sustain life is actually a miracle, and it is a combination of the sun, our atmosphere, and the ocean currents that make this planet sustainable. So to be quite frank, with all of you people who are complaining about global warming, I would suggest that you pray for global warming, because, as I said, the majority, about 7/8 of the time, we have spent in ice ages, or very close to ice ages. So yes, it's not a very happy time when it gets cold. As you know, in the wintertime most people are stuck indoors. It's snowing or raining. In Canada here it can be brutally cold, certainly minus 30 degrees centigrade is not uncommon in January and February in this part of the world. Anyway, let's just pop over these few articles that I found, and I will go through those and we'll come back and do a quick wrap up. Okay, here we go. South China Morning Post. China scientists warn of global cooling trick up nature's sleeve. Research sheds lights on 500-year Chinese weather cycle and suggests a cool change could be on the way. Findings leave no room for complacency or inaction. A new study has found winters in northern China have been warming since 4000 BC, regardless of human activity. But the mainland scientists behind the research warn there is no room for complacency or inaction on climate change, with the prospect of a sudden global cooling also posing a danger. The study found that winds from Arctic Siberia have been growing weaker, the conifer tree line has been retreating north, and there has been a steady rise in biodiversity in a general warming trend that continues today. It appears to have little to do with the increase in greenhouse gases, which began with the Industrial Revolution, according to the researchers. Lead scientist Dr. Wu Jing from the Key Laboratory of Cenozoic Geology and Environment at the Institute of Geology and Geophysics, part of the Chinese Academy of Sciences, said the study has found no evidence of human influence on northern China's warming winters. Driving forces include, are you ready? Driving forces include the sun, the atmosphere, and its interaction with the ocean, Wu said. We have detected no evidence of human influence, but that does not mean we can just relax and do nothing. Moon Lake, a small volcanic lake hidden in the deep forest of China's Greater Qingan mountain range, where a team of scientists spent more than a decade studying the secrets hidden in its sediments. Wu and her colleagues are concerned that as societies grow more used to the concept of global warming, people will develop a misplaced confidence in our ability to control climate change. Nature, they warned, may trick us and may catch us totally unprepared, causing chaos, panic, famine and even wars as the global climate system is disrupted. There are already alarming signs, according to their paper, which has been accepted for publication by the online Journal of Geophysical Research, Atmospheres. Wu and her colleagues spent more than a dozen years studying the sediments under Moon Lake, a small volcanic lake hidden in the deep forests of the Greater Qingan mountain range in China's Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region. They found that winter warming over the past 6,000 years has not been a smooth ride, with ups and downs occurring about every 500 years. Their findings confirmed an earlier study by a separate team of Chinese scientists published by online journal Scientific Reports in 2014, which first detected the 500-year cyclical pattern of China's summer monsoons and linked it to solar activity. Wu said the latest study with 10,000 years worth of new data not only helped to draw a more complete picture of the 500-year cycle, but also revealed a previously unknown mechanism behind the phenomenon, which suggests that the impact of the sun on Earth's climate may be greater than previously thought. According to Wu, the variation in the solar activity alone was usually not strong enough to induce the rapid changes in vegetation the research team recorded in sediment cores of Moon Lake. Instead, the scientists found that the warming impact was amplified by a massive random interaction between surface seawater and the atmosphere in the Pacific Ocean, known as the El Niño Southern Oscillation. As a result of the research findings, Wu said she was now more worried about cooling than warming. A sharp drop of temperature will benefit nobody. The biggest problem is, we know it will come, we don't know exactly when. This from Science News. University of Minnesota researchers uncover surprising effects of climate patterns in ancient China. University of Minnesota Geology and Geophysics researchers, along with their colleagues from China, have uncovered surprising effects of climate patterns on social upheaval and the fall of dynasties in ancient China. Their research identifies a natural phenomena that may have been the last straw for some Chinese dynasties, a weakening of the summer Asian monsoons. Such weakening accompanied the fall of 3 dynasties and now could be lessening precipitation in northern China. It's pretty hard to see here. This is the fall of the Tang dynasty, the fall of the Yuan dynasty and the fall of the Ming dynasty, and you can see by these little dips here they all happened in cooling periods. The work rests on climate records preserved in the layers of stone in a 118mm long stalagmite found in Wangxiang Cave in Gansu Province, China. By measuring amounts of the elements uranium and thorium throughout the stalagmite, the researchers could tell the date each layer was formed, and by analysing the signatures of two forms of oxygen in the stalagmite, they could match amounts of rainfall and measure a summer monsoon strength to those dates. Okay, so here is a much better picture, and this is from Adapt 2030. David Dubine put this together long before the Minnesota University put this together. And you can see it goes from 1000 AD, 5 dynasties collapse, Ur minimum. Jin dynasty collapses, Mongol invasions. See, look at all these low points. Yuan dynasty collapse, drought, 1340 to 1380, the Wolf minimum. Zheng He exploration, Spora minimum. Ming dynasty collapse, Maunder minimum, Little Ice Age. And the Northern Chinese famine, Qing dynasty 1876 to 1879, Dalt minimum. And we're now going into a new solar minimum. And so this is why the Chinese are scared to death of cooling trends, and why they want to mitigate, and why they're forced to be quite honest about this situation. Whereas Western governments seem to be compelled to lie to its citizens about this particular situation. Okay, so here is a chart. I don't know if you can read down here. 740,000 years of data, and this is from the Greenland ice cores. This is where we are today, and you can see these are all ice ages. Look at them. This is all way cooler than today's present temperature, and you can see the little jump ups of warm periods, way warmer than today, by the way. Look at where we are, where we've been. We have been through global warming, and now we're in a cooling trend, as you can see how this falls down. And interesting enough, I don't know if you could see here, but the black line is temperature and the red line is CO2. And you can see that the temperature starts to rise first, and then the CO2 starts to rise. When the temperature has peaked, it starts to fall, and then this is about, temperature causes CO2 change. CO2 red curve lags behind temperature, black curve, by 700 to 2800 years for a time span over 260,000 years. And so CO2 is not an issue at all. I love this chart because it's undeniable. And I think that it's very concerning. As that scientist Wu said, a cooling trend does nobody any favours. And this from the Weather Network. It snowed in Canada this weekend, and it was not in the Arctic. Has summer 2019 not been up to your standards as far as warmth and sunshine go? Here's a sight that might make you appreciate it a bit more. Thanks to an unusually fall-like system spinning over the northern prairies, winter was able to sneak back into northern British Columbia this weekend, turning grassy surfaces white within a matter of hours. And here's a time lapse. And you can see the date, August the 17th. 2 days ago. This is August, remember. We're still in summer. Okay, so unless anybody should happen to think that I am a climate change denier, which is just an insulting term, of course, no, I'm not. We've had 5 billion years of climate change on this planet, and it's not about to stop changing now. Now, I felt that these global warming scientists were going to end up having egg on their face when they said the science is over. The science is never over as far as climate is concerned, and to say that is just absolutely foolhardiness. Okay, and of course the reason they said that is because if you don't say the words global warming to the government, guess what? You are not getting any funding for your research, for your science, and your studies. And this, of course, is devastating to scientists, so they have to fall in line and basically go along with the government funding narrative. And I believe that the whole government narrative around global warming is based on making you feel guilty enough to pay a carbon tax. And as you saw in the articles, carbon dioxide, human activity, has nothing to do with climate change. The climate change is all on its own. Certainly we have polluted this planet. We are a filthy, filthy creature. We're destroyers. We are planet destroyers. The pollution that we have created through drilling oil wells, refining, all of this kind of stuff, all of our factory processes, is absolutely disgraceful. And we have pretended collectively that this has done no damage to the planet. And yes, indeed, governments and corporations have tried to hoodwink us, but I think we have all collectively been in a state of denial, because, I don't know about you, but I've certainly seen the conditions on this planet, as far as nature is concerned, deteriorate drastically. We've lost over 50% of our songbirds, our meadow songbirds. In fact, every species on this planet is in a state of crisis right now because of the pollution that we have caused, and we don't seem to be able to control ourselves. Anyway, there will be a price to pay when that polluted land, when all of those water tables that have been fracked and infiltrated by these fracking chemicals, when this starts to come back and haunt, you are going to see just a horrible scenario, especially down in the USA. They've gone fracking mad in order to achieve energy independence, and this is going to have blowback like you wouldn't believe. I would say conservatively that just about every water table in the USA is now compromised in some way or another from fracking. And we don't seem to care about it. You see, the focus has become carbon dioxide, which is, I might remind you, half a percentage, 0.49 actually percent of our atmosphere. It's tiny, it's minuscule. And of course, is anybody forgetting that we are carbon-based units? Everything on this planet, you burn trees, what does it turn into? Carbon. We are a carbon-based life form on a carbon planet. We produce carbon dioxide, and our plants need carbon dioxide to grow and flourish. And if the truth be known, we are at historically low carbon dioxide levels. The carbon dioxide content on this planet could easily double, and the biggest change you would see is about a 1 degree increase in temperature. But certainly CO2 is not the issue. Don't worry yourself about it. Do not get pulled into this whole government narrative and panic about the whole nonsense idea. Don't worry about that. Worry about pollution, and worry about how you're going to grow food and feed yourself during this grand solar minimum. Okie dokie, well, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe below. This is a very, very important issue, and I'm sure I'm going to get more than a few trolls coming on and making comments that I don't know what I'm talking about. But you look at those charts. The ice core samples do not lie, and the moon lake and the stalactite analysis do not lie. Okay, take those as gospel. And in the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we will talk very, very shortly. You take care now. See ya. Bye.